Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on the Winter 2019 season of anime, my favorites and everything else, the post-coverage of the Winter 2019 season. And this is everything that I was watching, both holdovers from previous seasons to the brand new series that just debuted in the Winter 2019 season. And I've bracketed up this list in threes. First, we have my overall favorites from the Winter 2019 season. Then we have the really good stuff, and then to round it all off, we have the meh category, or what is essentially all of the things that let me down, the letdowns and things like that. I actually do have a special sort of asterisk, fourth thing covering all live action and just regular cartoon series I was watching, which I always cover at the top of each season, what live action shows I'm into and things like that. So just to get that out of the way real quick, I have on that list Doom Patrol, which I didn't watch past the second episode because it was really kind of a letdown to me. All of the mature language and things like that. I didn't find it as accessible to the mass audience as I wish it would have been. Lethal Weapon Season 3, which was a step down ever since they killed off the Riggs character, but it was still somewhat enjoyable. My sister and I would get together and watch it every week. Riverdale Season 3, which I'm actually 3 episodes behind on. It's really a shame that they lost Luke Perry, who sadly passed away due to a massive stroke recently, and it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that, write out his character or recast or whatever they're going to do on that show. Of course, I'm covering every week Star Trek Discovery. Star Wars Resistance was the brand new Star Wars animated series, was pretty good, especially toward the end. And then, of course, the Orville, which I'm also covering episodically every week. And so that's all the live action or non-Japanese animated stuff that I was watching. So that brings us to the list. Let's get into the list, starting off with the favorites. And I've done these all alphabetically, so I'm not putting any show greater or lesser than the other. I'm just going to list them off alphabetically as far as the favorites that I watched all through the Winter 2019 season, the really good stuff and the letdowns. So beginning us off with the alphabetic, listing is Dororo. And I have been loving this series. I didn't really know what to expect. I knew there was going to be sort of a historical element going into it. I had no idea about the supernatural aspect of things and how intertwined that would become with the main characters, Dororo and, Hyakimaru. And it's just been astounding every week. I've really, really been enjoying it. It's definitely one of my top tier favorites for the Winter 2019 season. And it continues. It's continuing on as of the time of this recording. I think it's a 2-core series. Following on from there, I have Gegege no Kitaro, which is one that's a holdover from several seasons back now. And it has been just spectacular. They really ramped up the tension in the last few episodes, especially with, surrounding the main characters. I mean, they killed off one of the main characters, and it was at the hands of another one of the main characters, Mana, the human girl. Had offed Cat Chick or Neko-san, because she had attacked her mother, and it was all the grand manipulations of this nameless, yokai, creature, monster, whatever you want to call it. And it even looked like Kitaro's own father, Daddy Eyeball, had been offed, and it was just like, whoa, this is getting mind-blowing. They were pulling no punches, and that's been from the get-go, from the word go. Gegege no Kitaro pulled no punches. It has always told these really engrossing stories, and there are always lessons to be learned and things like that, and commentary on human frailty and expectations of living and greed, sloth, all of this. Just a great, in-depth series, and as far as I know, it's continuing as well. It's still ongoing. I think next week's episode, as of the time of this recording, is episode 50. So I don't think that's going to be a cap on the series. I don't know. There has been no announcement that I've seen as far as when they're going to, cut it off. Still ongoing, still badass as all hell. So next on my list of favorites was My Roommate is a Cat. And this was a really heartening, heartwarming series. Brought laughs, brought tears. I could very much highly relate to the main character who, had lost his parents fairly early on in life, whereas he had no sibling. I was fortunate enough to have a sister who I took care of and became the primary caregiver of. But I found myself really relating, especially having been all my life an animal lover and taking comfort from having pets, cats, dogs, fish, hamsters, gerbils, all that kind of stuff, a turtle at one point. And this whole story is about him. You know, he is an aspiring writer, much as I am as well. That was another point of connectivity between me and the main character. You know, as much as he is an aspiring writer, he doesn't want anything to do with the outside world. And one day he happens upon this little kitten who really kind of saves his life, but they save each other's lives because this kitten is a stray. You know, she's just sort of making her rounds and getting food where she can, surviving only by the skin of her teeth, and he takes her in, and it's a whole fun little adventure and bunch of misadventures of their trying to learn to live with each other. And what's really unique about the series is each episode flips back and forth from perspectives. As far as, you know, first half of the episode is usually his perspective, the human's perspective, and then the other half of the episode is usually from the cat's perspective. So you're hearing the cat's voice and what she's thinking, and how concerned she is over her new caregiver, and that he doesn't seem to be able to take care of himself as well as he should, and the cat feels it's her responsibility, and it's just one of the cutest things ever. I really, really loved it. It warmed my heart. Following on from there, in the favorites category is Piano no Mori Season 2, or Piano of the Forest. And I just love everything about this series. It isn't the greatest animation ever, but the emphasis they put on classical music is something I really love about it. You know, classical music being just one of many genres of music that I'm into, from rock, heavy metal, pop, you know, big band swing stuff from the 40s, and just the emphasis on the characterization. You know, these underdog characters who are being put into this competition and playing off of each other, and how much that means to them, and sort of seeing behind the scenes of what each of these, you know, pianists and musicians are going through. It really is a beautifully paced series, and it never gets, you know, too fast going for its own good or anything like that. There's always this like somber calm to each and every episode, and it's just a really relaxing show to watch, even when it gets tumultuous, even when it gets heartening and things of that nature. It's still always enjoyable, especially because of that baseline of focus on classical music. And following on from there, in the favorites category, I have Sword Art Online Alicization, which is a series I've really been enjoying, looking forward to watching it every single week. It very much could be a top contender for my favorite Sword Art Online anything Sword Art Online related. I have since said, going back to Sword Art Online 2, that the first half of Sword Art Online 2, the second season of Sword Art Online, the GGO arc, or Gun Gale Online arc, has been long-standingly my favorite Sword Art Online anything, you know, to this date, to this point. But the more of Alicization I've been watching, the engrossing nature of the story, the pacing of the plot every episode, how Kirito is not the main focused upon character. He very much has half of the weight being carried by his sort of partner character Yu-Gi-Oh throughout the entirety of the season, seeking out their childhood friend Alice, wanting to save her when they find out she's one of the penultimate knights, you know, as inducted by the system administrator, which is this whole it's a whole big thing to explain, but it is, from the animation to the music to the pacing to the plotting to the tugging at the heartstrings to the bringing smiles and wows and shocks and twists and turns. There's a very good possibility that Alicization is going to topple over by a few yards the GGO arc for me. GGO will probably be relegated to second all-time favorite SAO anything. I believe it's going to be continuing in October, I think is what I read. There's two series that's going to be continuing that I have on my list, and I didn't write down you know, which was going to be continuing when. I think Alicization continues in October of this year, 2019. And I'm just going to be waiting with bated breath for that, on the edge of my seat, because that's where it left me, especially with the cliffhanger and where it leaves Kirito in the end, seemingly having lost it all and quite possibly about to lose his own life in the real world, not just in the CG, you know, MMORPG environment that he finds himself in, that, you know, the entire show took place in. And so it has to be a favorite of mine for this season. Of course, it goes back to the previous season, but whatever. It tentatively wrapped up for a time within the winter 2019 season, so it had to be on my list. And rounding us off for the favorites of the Winter 2019 anime season is the Rising of the Shield Hero. Now, anyone who's been following my channel knows I've been making periodic posts in my community feed and over on Facebook and things like that about this series. It too is going to be continuing on. I believe it's a 2-core as well. And it's just been astounding. It's another isekai series where humans from our own world are brought over into a fantasy realm, fantasy RPG kind of realm and everything like that. And the Shield Hero himself, he's just so put upon and so singled out for all of this heinous treatment and things like that, that it's mind-blowing. And conversely to that, whenever things are going right for him, and his 2 traveling companions, you know, which I know there's much ado about people going fanatical over them and shipping them and everything like that. It's just been a really resounding series. I know people can usually take or leave isekai series, that trope and everything like that, but I tend to like them more often than I don't. But there are occasions where I'm like, I've seen it, been there, done that, I'm not going to watch it. This one I'm very glad that I did sign up for, from, you know, the kick-ass OP to the kick-ass characterization. And every time you see, you know, like the spear hero, who's the main sort of antagonist, you know, to the Shield Hero himself, whenever he gets his comeuppance, it's just so satisfying. You know, and there are a lot of interesting things going on character-wise. There's you know, the sort of evil princess and then her younger sister. The younger sister is actually going to be the one ascending to the crown, and they're trying to like kill her off to get her out of the way because they hate the Shield Hero and all this kind of stuff. And it's just all of the machinations, all of the melodrama there is actually quite engrossing and compelling, and just keeps you rooting for the Shield Hero and then some. And it's just a spectacular, spectacular watch. So once again, to round them all off, the favorites category in the Winter 2019 anime season was Dororo, Gegege no Kitaro, My Roommate is a Cat, Piano no Mori Season 2, Sword Art Online Alicization, and The Rising of the Shield Hero. Now that gets us on to the really good stuff of the Winter 2019 season. Not quite at the favorites level, but really enjoyable every week, and I did not want to miss any episodes of things like that. And so the ever-continuing Black Clover starts us off alphabetically in this list. As far as I know, it's still ongoing as well. We're up into like the 70s episode-wise. No sheer or clear sign of its coming to a halt anytime soon, and it's just been really enjoyable. I've been really shocked and surprised as somebody who very much considered highly you know, dropping it in the early going, like the first 6 episodes or so. You know, now to be up in episode 70 something, it's just like mind-blowing to me that I've been enjoying it as much as I have, that I have found the character of Asta, who's the main sort of focused on character, who was highly, highly annoying in the early going, has actually become somewhat aspirational and hilarious and just a really cool character overall. So that's why it makes the really good listing in this Winter 2019 season. Following on from there, I have Boogie Pop and Others, which if you've seen either of my posts on my personal Facebook account or my YouTube community feed about the finale of Boogie Pop and Others, I found the finale, the final arc, especially most pointedly the final episode of the season, to be somewhat of a letdown. But all of the rest of the season of Boogie Pop and Others was actually fairly enjoyable. It was broken up into like 2 to 3 episode arcs all throughout the stretch of it, and each arc I found to be relatively resounding. The summarization, the culminations of each of those were pretty satisfying to me, and I had found them intriguing all along the way, even though sometimes I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. By the end, the other leg would drop and all answers would be put forth, you know. And so it was pretty resounding, pretty intriguing to watch every week. And but it really kind of, you know, floundered itself toward the end. So I can't lift it up to favorites, because even though it was something I was eagerly engaging with every week, just the faultiness of that last arc, and especially the final episode, it didn't really put a resounding cap on the bottle of the series on whole for me. So it was very good, but not quite favorite level. So falling on from there, I have Hinamaru Sumo, which was definitely one of the more resounding series of the Winter 2019 season. And there's been a lot of comparisons. I think I was maybe among the first who said it was somewhat cut from similar cloth to Shokugeki no Soma, because I love Shokugeki no Soma, and the main character, Hinamaru, you know, the titular character, in Hinamato Sumo. He was very much akin to Soma Yukihira in that series, being the underdog, being downtrodden, and just reaching and rising and gripping for his dreams, as much as he could, and fulfilling that in the end. Being all about sumo wrestling, which is something I know nothing about. I learned quite a lot about it watching this anime series, although I think there were probably some embellishments from how sumo is in reality and things like that. But all of the characters were awesome. Seeing them band together and being a thorough family, being a unit, and seeing them achieve the goals that they set for themselves was just resounding every week. And it was just a really affirming series to watch every single week. So following on from there, in the really good category, I have Quintessential Quintuplets, which is a series you may have seen me posting periodically about over on my Facebook account or my YouTube community feed as well. I had talked about how they were very much sort of red herring-esque, putting forth certain of the 5 quintuplet sisters who the main character is supposed to eventually marry and things like that. And that wasn't the main focused upon aspect of the plot. It was more so his being their tutor and trying to get them through school, trying to get their grades up and things like that, as having been hired on by their father, and all of the misadventures of interacting with them. Some of them don't want anything to do with him, some of them really like him but are understated about it, and all of that kind of stuff. But the overhanging sort of, carrot at the end of the stick was that at some point he marries one of these 5 sisters. And so it was a constant debate for me, and I think a lot of viewers, who is he going to end up with? And what I really was appreciative of in the end of at least this first season, if we ever get another season, remains to be seen. I know the source material, the manga or whatever it is ongoing, and it still hasn't been clearly answered in the manga who he ends up with. But, at least for this first season, I like that it ended ambiguously. They didn't come out and reveal any one of the 5 sisters that it could be that he marries. We do see the wedding happening in the end cap, the epilogue of the final episode of the season. But it's anyone's guess who it could actually be. There may be somewhat of a subtle clue as far as the hair tint, the color of the hair of the bride herself, as to which of the 5 sisters it might be. But as far as I was concerned, because we've seen each of the sisters, wearing disguises and they were dressing up as each other throughout the series and such like that, it could be any of the 5 of them. And I was just really appreciative of the fact that they didn't give a definitive answer. It's understandable now, learning that the manga is ongoing and there isn't a definitive answer therein either. But I really was respectful of the fact that if it couldn't be the one that I wanted it to be, even though I'm not much of a shipper, there was one of the 5 sisters I was very much angling toward and wanting it to be. So if I couldn't get a definitive answer that it was the one that I wanted, I'm glad it wasn't answered at all. That he does marry one of them, but we don't know which one it is, even to this late degree. So following on from there, in the really good category, I have That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Of course, this is a holdover from the previous season, and it is going to be continuing tentatively with a season 2. I think it said sometime in 2020. And it was just another isekai series, but this one was very affirming every week and really just kind of calming and passive to watch. Like, you didn't have to get really drawn into it. All of the qualms, all of the problems that debuted for the characters were pretty easily resolved, and resolved in satisfying ways. And it was just a satisfying watch every week. It was something I could just pop on, sit back, relax, and enjoy. And for that, it was really good as far as I was concerned. It meets the really good category in my listing. And then to round us off in the really good category is The Cost of Smiles, which was definitely a more heart-wrenching series, about this young princess whose country is coming under the attack of a warring nation. And you're following characters on both sides, mostly the 2 female leads of the series, and how that all shapes up, the cost of smiles, the cost of living and having to be faced with a war where you're losing all of your nearest and dearest, your friends, your family. The main character, the main princess, her whole life has been shaped and molded by war, and it's the last thing on earth that she wants. is to see more deaths, you know, coming for what to her are stupid reasonings, you know, technology, the technology of war, the machinations of war and things like that. And she's just willing to risk it all to try to put a stamp on it, to stop it. And as I say, you're bounding back and forth between both sides, characters on both sides. Most pointedly, the sort of seeming, if you want to consider the princess herself as the protagonist, the seeming antagonist, although she's much a protagonist in her own right, the female lead on the other side, whose name escapes me off the top of my head, you know, you're constantly seeing the machinations from the soldier point of view. You know, it's not only the princess who's overlording a whole army and trying to come up with strategies and listen to her higher-ups and things like that who can strategize better and find more effective ways of, you know, destroying the enemy. You also see it from the soldier's perspective on the other side. And so the end game of this series is really this intriguing, compelling extension of an olive branch between these two female leads, whose history and whose connectivity is that much more than they would have at first assumed. And it's just really, it was a really enjoyable kind of series, and it did definitely have heartening moments as much as tear-jerking moments to cap off the really good segment of my listing here. Once again, to go over all of the really good stuff: Black Clover, Boogie Pop and Others, Hinamato Sumo, Quintessential Quintuplets, That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, and The Cost of Smiles. And so that brings us to the final tier, the meh, or the letdown category. And I only have 4 listed here, and I'm going to try not to go too in-depth as to why I listed them as such. The first one, again alphabetized, is Circlet Princess, which, as of the time of this recording, is still as yet ongoing. And I think that's largely because this was not picked up for official subtitling. I believe it's been relegated to fan subs every week, and as such, it has been running late every week. You never know when the episodes are going to come out. It doesn't seem to ever come out on the same day of the week or anything like that. And so it's been really frustrating to watch, you know, not only because of the delay between episodes and never knowing for sure when it's going to come out. There hasn't really been a whole lot of connectivity to any of the characters either, and some of the characters are annoying. It's been a passive watch for me, and like whenever it crops up, I'll watch it hoping it amounts to something more, and it never quite does. And you know, so it's the first on the list because it's alphabetized, but it's also the first on the list because it would have been the first that I would have come up with as far as being a letdown in the winter 2019 anime season. As well as we have the short subject, air quotes, comedy series, How Clumsy You Are, Miss Ueno. And it was okay. It wasn't ever really resoundingly funny. It was overly perverted. The entire sort of emphasis of the series is Miss Ueno. The titular character is always trying to come up with these perverted means of getting this boy in her you know, science club to put his hands on her or whatever. And then whenever like they actually have any physical contact, she freaks out. And so it's, you know, that's it. That's the gist of it. And so it's meh. It was kind of meh. Following on from there, I have Minaria Friends, which it was something I was really looking forward to. As something somewhat loosely relating to the Shingeki no Bahamut or Rage of Bahamut series. It was supposed to be sort of an offshoot, spin-off kind of thing, taking place within the same universe. And I'm sad to say every episode was just boring as all hell. Primarily dealing with 2 female leads who are very smitten and in love with each other, and just nothing ever really happens, and whatever does happen, it's just kind of like, huh, okay, well, whatever. And seeing them tiptoeing on eggshells around each other every single episode, it's just, there's no progression. The animation was great. The you know, the architecture, the design of the world was really beautiful and meticulous and everything like that. But it was a thorough letdown. It just wasn't enjoyable. The only gratification I took from it every week, Minaria Friends, were the end cards, because I liked the art. And that was it. You know, that's really all I took away from it. And then rounding us off in the meh or letdown category for the finale is The Magnificent Kotobuki, which was a series I had assumed going in was going to be something kind of akin to Brave Witches or, you know, Kentai Collection Kenkole, which I really enjoyed. which wasn't perfect in its own right, but at least the characters stood out in Ken Cole and things like that. This series, not so much. This series was 12 episodes in length, and it had 3 decent episodes out of those 12. 3 character-based episodes that revolved entirely around a specific character of the main cast. All of the rest of the time, it was too speedily paced. The dialogue was constantly going at a rapid clip. Characters were constantly talking over each other, constantly bickering with each other, constantly being annoying. It was so hard to follow. On a few occasions, I actually caved and put, the episode playback on a slower speed so I could actually read all of the subtitles of everything they were saying. And then I realized I'm going to end up, taking twice the length of time to watch an episode just to make sure I get everything. I didn't call it quits on the series. Rather than doing that, I ended up just sort of watching passively, only half paying attention. Because most of the dialogue was just bickering and was stuff you could completely ignore without a problem. Because as long as you were watching the visuals, you understood what was happening. You understood by the end of the episode what had transpired and this, that, and the other thing, where the characters were left by the end. After those 3 character-based episodes, which saw the entire plot of each episode revolving around a specific character, all of the rest of the time, as I say, you're not really pointedly focusing on any of the main characters. They're all just going at once. They're all constantly bickering at once, and it's so frustrating and annoying, especially as it's going so fast, and you can't even catch up with it if you want to. And, I mean, primarily the only thing that offsets it is the airplane battles, because all of the main characters, the principal characters, are fighter pilots and things like that. And but even all of those scrimmages, while they are cool, especially the final episode took place in a city, whereas most of the rest of the air battles took place in the skies over desert terrain and ravines and mountains and things like that. They actually were flying through a cityscape, and that was pretty awesome sauce. But I mean, I wasn't invested in any of it because none of the characters, there was no connectivity with any of the characters. They were all really putting me off all the time. Talking, I mean, if you put this video on 2 times speed and then you put that on 2 times speed, that's how fast they're constantly talking. The momentum is constantly going. And it's just hard to really parse through it and figure out what in the hell is going on. What is actually, sort of the pinnacle of each plot for each episode. And it's just sort of the same plot over and over and over again, recycled. Baddie crops up, they have to jump in their planes, and they have to have an airborne skirmish against whoever that baddie is. And sometimes they win, most of the time they lose, and they come crawling home, and then they get drunk. They get chased in the bar on their big Zeppelin. That is their sort of HQ. And so it was, above all, among all of those that were the letdown category, titles, Circlet Princess, How Clumsy You Are, Miss Ueno, Minari of Friends, The Magnificent Kotobuki, even though it is the last on the list, it is befitting that it is there because it was the most frustrating, the most disappointing, the biggest letdown for me, as of this one man's opinion, my own personal subjective tastes. And so that pretty much covers everything that I was watching in the winter 2019 anime season. My favorites again, the really good stuff, and then the really just wholehearted letdowns, the meh quality series. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you were watching for the winter 2019 season of anime. All your likes, dislikes, loves, hates, everything like that. Anything goes in the comments below. Any recommendations you have, chances are, if I haven't already been watching it, frankly, it was because I either didn't have the time to get around to it or didn't really have the interest in it. But I'm still going to be open to any recommendations of things that I didn't happen to mention in this particular listing of what I did watch to potentially check out down the line, that kind of thing. All I ask is that you are respectable in sharing your own opinions and likes and dislikes of whatever you watched for the season, and are respectful of others as well along similar lines. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to consider supporting my channel, please have a look at my PayPal support link posted both in the description as well as the comments below. You have options very much akin to Patreon that you can explore as far as setting up a monthly contribution, one-time only kind of thing. Send me a personal message with any contribution you see fit to send my way, requesting topics I may discuss in the future, ask for shout-outs, make recommendations of things I may check check out, and of course I would shout you out down the line if I happen to cover any of your recommendations, things of that sort. And just anything you saw fit to send my way would be 2 thumbs up for me and secure my longevity on YouTube for the foreseeable future, and would just be very much appreciated if you took the time. And so yeah, otherwise we're going to be very shortly getting into the spring 2019 season of anime, and I'm sure I'm going to have a watch list coming, you know, the first week or two into it when I know what I'm going to be watching, and hopefully we'll have this discussion all over again about what new stuff and ongoing things we're going to be tapping into for the spring 2019 season. I look forward to seeing you at that time, and until then, I'll catch you all later. Peace.